1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
There's the crack of the bat, the slap of the leather. And it's time for Detroit, City of Champions. My name's Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
And we are well into the story.
Just Episode 46.
The story of the storied year.
Greatest season in American sport history.
Oh, man, I tell you, I'm loving this. I'm loving this story. I was actually I did Animal Talk. I just did an interview with a woman who wrote a book who had like a lot of tinges of history. And I really wish I could remember her name right now. It's Cynthia Brannigan. All right, now I remembered it. And it's the name of the book is The Last Diving Horse in America. So back in
I think I've seen a movie on that where they had diving horses. There was something like Disney movie a few years back in the 90s or something.
Yeah, but I mean this was like actual in Jersey. On the Jersey Shore, on the boardwalk, they would have horses that would go up this ramp 60 feet high and get a little girl in a bikini on the back of them and then jump off into this 10-foot deep pool underneath.
Crazy.
It's insane. The pictures are just surreal. But the book that she wrote really dives into the history of the people that started doing this and why they did it. And it was all back in the 20s. And so all these photos that I was looking at these photos and talking to this woman, and I was like, wow, I'm having Detroit City of Champions flashbacks because, but it's really cool. It's kind of messed up, though, that they're making these horses jumping off
the things, yeah.
Yeah, it's nutty.
Well, I can actually say that of the 33 championships from 1935, they did not have a horse diver.
There were no diving horses.
There was a horse race champion.
Yes,
and then there's also a diving champion, as in Dick Degener. He was a diving champion.
Oh, really? There was a
diving. Yeah, there was a diver, but there was a diver and there was a horse racer, but there was no diving horse.
Horses,
so that's one sport that they did not have.
Yeah,
so.
It was like surreal though, talking to her.
That's crazy. That's probably why they were such a spectacle. It probably made all kinds of money doing shows like that.
They did it up to 1978.
Jeez.
All the way to 78. 1980, the horses were still around. They weren't doing the diving anymore, and they started the area got bought off by some resorts. And so they were selling off the horses, and they got sold to slaughterhouses.
Oh, my God.
Cynthia, saved the last horse.
Really?
And took it.
Oh, that's why the book said
the last
diving horse.
The last diving horse. So
Did she ever dive with it?
She's like, no. She actually never even rode it. She said I was only on it once.
Oh, geez.
She goes, but we would walk and we would she goes, I took him into the Delaware River. She goes, she crossed the Delaware with the horse right where Washington crossed the Delaware.
I don't understand. Did she speculate why the sport ever stopped? Because I'd go watch that. I'd go watch a diving horse, man. That'd be pretty awesome.
Because it's awful and it's mean.
Why is it? Did the horses get killed doing it?
Oh,
maybe they like diving.
Try doing something like that.
Maybe
today.
they like to dive.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know. With all this, you can't even have any cool, fun things anymore.
I know. It's like the Detroit Zoo. You get no more chimpanzees riding mini bikes. Forget about it.
Yeah,
no more fun.
I know, dude. I think they still do. What is it? They have races where I think monkeys ride dogs. I think have you ever seen that?
It's got to
be. They used to have that at Gibraltar.
Or something.
No, they used to have it. I think it was at Gibraltar Trade Center.
Oh, get out!
No, it was. They would have monkeys, and they were dressed like little jockeys,
right,
riding dogs, and they would race. They'd race around tracks. Yeah, that's that's a sport I would totally get into.
Yeah, it's what's the other thing? It's
talk about the money that could be gambled on that. That'd
high school, we would play donkey basketball for a fundraiser, and they would bring all these donkeys into the gym, and there'd be a team of teachers and a team of kids, and you'd be on the donkeys trying to play basketball off the back of these donkeys.
See, that's great. That's awesome.
And then everybody was waiting for the donkey to take a crap in the middle of the thing.
That's what everybody's there for. Yeah.
So just waiting for, it's like when you go to NASCAR, you're just waiting for somebody to crash.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's. But as I'm saying, there's
just waiting for that donkey to poop on the floor.
Yeah, but that's some of the interesting stuff like that, man.
But it was that mix of history and diving back into the time and just how it was a different time, and we're like just looking at Joe Louis, and from modern eyes looking at Joe Louis, it's one thing, you know, but him living it and coming up so fast and so furious, it had to be. This was just a whirlwind.
Oh, massive! And we're gonna see even more so what a whirlwind it was today.
Because the fight with Primo, right, was a big thing.
Yeah,
that's where we're headed today.
Thing, yeah, and so you're hit it right on the head because, you know, a lot of times I think Joe Louis, you know, not everybody's heard the name Joe Louis. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact there was Joe Louis. I mean, Joe Louis Arena definitely kept the name in the forefront of the public eye.
Yeah.
You know, every single day of the week for the last, you know, however long the building was open, 50 years.
Right.
And so it kept the name of Joe Louis out in the public eye. You know, on a daily basis, just from the name alone. But I always wonder just how much the modern day people, how much we actually know Joe Louis and how much we know about him and just how phenomenally important he really was. I think that you know, like the ensuing boxing years with Muhammad Ali and all these years, I think that it kind of came to, you know, dominate, you know, the public eye because there was more footage. You know, Muhammad Ali in this. You know, that was more, you know, it happened in the Vietnam War during these, you know, this era where a lot of people still have memories of that, you know, and they were touched by the events that they saw. Whereas Joe Louis, the people that lived through that era are, you know, their voices are fading, their memories are fading. And so that's what I wonder. That's why I think so much that there needs to be a Joe Louis movie, especially in conjunction with the City of Champions season, because that is the context with which the rise of Joe Louis takes place is with the his whirlwind of events are surrounded by a whirlwind of events in Detroit. And that's what's such an incredible, I mean, that's why when you see how he slots in with this overall stuff going on, you realize just what, I mean, it's like, imagine being a fan at this time where everywhere you're looking, there's something amazing happening. And there's so many stories. When you get into the 35 newspapers, like when I was doing the research for this stuff, it's like every single day. Some days when you're, you know, I would spend, you know, every single day for years going through these newspapers. And some days you're spending like one day or two days or whatever examining a single day's clippings because there's so much stuff going on, and you're trying to sort of, you know, put it into its proper slot for when you write it into a book that you can, you know, that's, you know, you can actually separate it a little bit for the people that are, you know, going through the subject matter, you know, they can, you know, sort of put it in each little slot. But that's what I mean. Like, it's just dizzying how much stuff is going on, and with Joe Louis himself. You know, it's dizzying from where he came from in such a short amount of time.
Just a whirlwind.
I mean, 1934, a year before this.
Yeah.
His first fight is $50.
Yeah.
A year before this, he was still a Golden Glover.
Yeah.
He was an amateur, still trying to figure out, you know, I mean, where, you know, his John Roxborough's trying to figure out how he's just going to get enough money to, you know, because he was going through a divorce and trying to figure out a way to keep financing Joe Louis's just, you know, just general training. I mean, he was a nobody in 1934. But you're absolutely right. The dizzying heights of which he finds himself like a year later, like what, like, you know, the psychology. I've always wondered about, like, you know, like these psychologists, what field of psychology exists that studies, you know, the rapid rise of people to, like, from nothing up into, like, just the absolute mega stardom. Like, what does that do to somebody's mind, you know? Like, I mean, what guidebooks exist for somebody to go from nothing to being ultra famous and all the money they've ever dreamed
you
possible?
Get these young NFL players.
Absolutely.
You know, they're the one guy was 19. Was he on the Lions?
Which are you talking about?
They're the youngest NFL player.
I forgot.
I think he was on the line.
Was it? Well, I'm just
this season.
But in general, I mean, it happens every single year where you get these guys that come out of college,
2019,
in basketball, football, every sport, and even and even celebrities in Hollywood, like, you know, everything. They do one big movie, movie, and now they're the height of fame, and everybody knows their name. They've got all kinds of money, and they one of the great. I remember interview with Mike Tyson. It was really heavily. It was on, I think it was the Man Show that he was on. It was something like that. But it was like his first big interview he did where he was just, you know, talking sort of honestly about who he was in his career. And at the time, he was like kind of fresh off of a lot, like he was still fairly young. I think he just wrapped up a fight, one of his bigger fights.
Yeah.
But his career, I think, was just kind of, he still had a few more fights in him, but he was like kind of winding down. And they were asking him, like, you know, you made like first at the time he like didn't have much money left or whatever, and they I forgot the exact question, but they were saying something along the lines of like, how did you your wife got crazy, like your life got crazy, like you went to jail, you made all this, you spent all this money, you went to, it's like what the hell happened, and he's like, and he said his quote was something along the lines of, he's like, he goes, imagine somebody gives you $80 million when you're 18 years old. What are you gonna do? Like, how are you gonna live your life when you're 18? Somebody gives you $80 million when you're 18.
Holy crap!
He goes, what are you gonna do?
Somebody gives me $80 today. Yeah, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
with
but
myself.
$80 million. You're 18. I think back when I was 18 years old, man. That's the response everybody gets is like 18 years old. My God, what am I going to do? You already were sort of off the rails at 18 years old, didn't know what the heck's going on. And somebody gives you $80 million, and everybody, basically 99% of the people in your life are just going to be like kissing your rear end. And, you're worshiping the ground you walk on, they're basically trying to sponge money off of you. Yeah. And so I've always wondered about, like, there should almost be like especially in this modern day, this era with the rise of celebrityism, like almost like a psychological field, like an entire scientific, like a whole field of study into that, because but if there was, Joe Louis would certainly have to be in that study, because he was this is a prime example of that phenomena happening.
So how long was he in training camp before this fight with Primo?
So he arrived to New York. We talked about how he came off the train at this huge moment where he gets off the train. He's carried off the train. Yeah. There's a big press conference afterwards. He's going to the nightclubs where there's, kind of showcase him at nightclubs where he's dancing on stage a little bit. He's the hit of New York.
Sure.
And then they go to these training camps in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey, where it's like there's thousands. An entire like village was built around this boxing ring just to watch him there. And every single day, newspaper articles are being just written all over the place. And
and it's all prepping for this fight with Primo.
Just prepping for this fight with Primo Carnera. And so he arrives in mid-May. The fight is on June 25th, 1935. So he's basically about a month and a half. Yeah. He's like basically living out there. Yeah. And so there's and every single day is just hype. They're just hyping this fight, and from every direction. They have an entire accommodation area.
We got some images, and it looks like a crowd at a performance at a fight.
Yeah.
And it's just because there's just throngs of people there watching him train.
Yeah, just watching him train. Exactly. There was thousands just watching him train every day. And so
how do we get into this fight with Primo?
First of all, I wanted to talk about it just a little bit about who Primo was.
Okay,
kind of like, because you're only as good as the competition you face. If he's going in, this is a big fight, well, if he's going in to face some scrub, then it's not really a big fight.
No scrubs, no scrubs.
Yeah, but Primo. Primo Carnera was we've talked about, his name has come up in our show before a few times, but so Primo Carnera. His nickname is, he's got a few different nicknames. There's numerous nicknames, but the three I sort of focus in on. His first name, he's an Italian. He's 6'6", 265 pounds. And we have a couple pictures to show about with Primo where he is just an absolute monster.
Yeah, that's a heavyweight.
He was before
brick house
coming up in his life. He started off his first real job was as a circus showman. He was a strong man at a circus, like lifting weights. And just, he's got the most muscular physique. This guy is absolutely. Really this guy is just he's a mountain.
He's a beast.
He's a beast, and he's a chiseled beast. Yeah. He's not just some gangling tall guy. This guy is a monster. 6'6", 265 pounds.
So with that 6'6", he's got a reach like a
he's a monster. He's a chiseled beast.
Okay.
And so when somebody sees him at this, he's from Italy. He's going kind of traveling with the circus. They're like, as the strong man of a circus, and somebody sees him and goes, "Man, you're not."
You ever hit somebody before?
Yeah, you ever think about punching somebody? Have you ever thought about a different career where you're punching people in the face? And he's like, "Yeah, I've always had a little aggression I wanted to take out on somebody." And so he
I got a job for you.
Yeah, so he ends up learning how to box, and he starts working his way through there's actually a movie about Primo Carnera, and it's a somewhat of a low budget movie, but it's good.
Okay.
I've watched it. It's a decent movie. It, kind of shows his transition a little bit from, and then also, some of the, and so there was a lot of it's kind of good because it shows how a lot of these like gangsters and like bookies and gambling really tried to interfere with, but it's not trying to say that he was crooked by any means, but it just shows how the difficulties of navigating.
Oh, yeah.
If I was to say the big take from that movie was the difficulties of a boxer, especially in this era, navigating through the world of all these bookies and gamblers and how difficult it was. I think that was a big takeaway that I got from that movie. And but anyways, his nickname Dupreme is one name. What nickname they called him? The Ambling Alp is another nickname. And my favorite is the Man Mountain from Italia. The Man Mountain. That's I just love it because maybe I liked that before there was the mountain from Game of Thrones, but
right.
In the
same walking, they called him the.
But yeah,
the movies. The movie was Carnera, the Walking Mountain.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. That doesn't sound familiar. That doesn't sound
2008.
Like was it? Okay, that maybe that was that must have been it because I thought it was a different thing, but anyways, I don't remember that title. Maybe I just saw Carnera and just clicked on the play button.
Yeah.
But anyways, so kind of like the mountain from Game of Thrones, where he's like famous because he's just so big.
Right.
He's just played a role that nobody else could play. I mean, Carnera had roles in film. He had, he was a celebrity. He was on baseball cards, sports cards. I mean, he was a famous athlete of his day, and it is most because of the fact that he was a boxer, and also because of the fact that he was heavyweight champion of the world from June 29th, 1933, when he won the title from Jack Sharkey. Through June 14th, 1934, so roughly a year when he lost the title to Max Baer. So Joe, really just a year prior to his fight with Carnera, Primo was the heavyweight champion.
Right.
So this is a guy who in very recent memory was the heavyweight champion of the world. Since his loss to Baer, he had fought in 4 fights and won all 4 prior to his fight with Joe Louis. And I do want to mention a little aside. I kind of mentioned the gambling element. When he won his title, there was like rumors that Jack Sharkey or that there was some a little bit of crookedness to the fight, that maybe Sharkey had taken a dive to lose the belt because Carnera was such an easy draw because of his size, there's this new invincible giant that they could market.
Yeah.
But I want to put like a case in against. I mean, maybe even if that was true, which I don't know, and I don't know that there's a way to even prove that, because if it would have been proven, it probably would have been proven by now.
Right.
But I want to kind of mention one component that it adds a little bit of an exclamation point to how good he was, which is that one of his title defenses was against a guy named Paulino Uzkadun. Okay, I'm hoping I pronounced it
Sure. All right. Paulino's going to come gunning for
you.
you.
Uzkadun. So Paulino Uzkadun was Joe Louis would end up fighting him at the end of 1935.
Okay.
And I read the story of the match against Paulino Uzkadun, and he was a Spanish fighter, and he fought in this really unique style, which was like where he crouched up like a turtle. So he fought with like a low, he was like a pure defensive fighter. He was like almost impossible to hit.
Okay.
So he was a very unique fighter, and he was a very good fighter. Okay. And he had this they called him the Basque woodchopper. But he was a very good fighter, and he was not the type of guy, like from everything I've seen.
Yeah.
He was not the type of guy who would ever take a dive, and he was a very difficult fighter to beat. And Primo beat him, and he beat him in a 15-round decision. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, if he was good enough to beat Paulino,
right,
then he was good enough to be heavyweight champion, or at least at the top of the boxing world at this time.
Yeah.
So he's not some slouch that was just given his title. He was a legit fighter. And so another element of Carnera, there was a guy named Ernie Schaff who Primo fought and died. Ernie Schaff died 4 days after fighting Carnera. And so but some people say that Max Baer, who had fought him a month before, had actually done the damage that started the process. But another person said, but other people, but I mean, the fact that he was able to fight Primo Carnera means that he was, I mean, maybe Bayer started the process, he maybe, hit him, it did something to him, but regardless, he died 4 days after fighting Carnera. So there's that. And so at the time that that Carnera faces Joe Louis, Primo's record is 82-7.
Jeez.
He's won 82 fights. 62 of those fights are by knockout.
I don't know if I gotten out of bed 82
I know.
times
In a 7-year stretch. He's 28 years old. He's 28 years old. His record is 82-7.
Yeah.
And he's got 62 knockouous of those 82 fights. So, like,
he's a beast.
He's a beast.
A beast.
Yeah. So he's 28 years old. 80. This is his guy. 82. Joe Louis, in contrast, is 19-0 with 15 knockouts.
Yeah.
So he is. Louis is 21 years old. Primo's 28 years old. So he's still relatively young.
Mm-hmm.
So Primo is no slouch.
No.
And when he presents a very imposing, threat. I mean, look, I've got a photo of the weigh-in with Joe. We have this photo of the weigh-in, and I love this photo. There's another one that's even better, but it's a little grainy. I brought with the little cleaner shot. But this shot, you can see the size difference.
Oh yeah.
Joe looks like a little kid.
Yeah, he looks
on
like a
the
little
scale.
boy.
He's standing on.
Hi, nice to meet you, Mr. Carnera.
For people that can't see it, Joe is standing on the scale.
Oh my God, yeah.
And he's the same height as Primo, who's barefoot standing on the ground next to him.
And his legs are just tree trunks.
He's not
Joe's on these popsicle sticks.
Yeah, he's not some bandy-legged guy who skipped leg day with a big old chest. Primo is like well proportioned. He's an absolute monster of a human being. He's just, what's funny, like I say, is that he's just standing on the floor looking at Joe eye to eye, and Joe's on the scale.
Oh my God.
So you could just see it. So
this is gonna hurt.
Yeah. So he presents an intimidating. This is why Primo. The story of Primo and Joe is really just a footnote. Every time you ever read about the Primo fight, it's just always like, then he fought Primo, and then he got ready for the real fight against Max Bayer. But the reality is, this is Joe's first big time opponent. He's faced he's faced ranked boxers. He's beat everybody in his path, and he
needed a month and a half to prepare for this.
Absolutely. And so the first, I actually have a quote that I want to read.
Here's what we're going to learn, Joe. We're going to learn how to get hit.
Yeah. That's why we talked a little bit at the end of the last episode about the guys that they were bringing in to spar with Joe for this fight. Were these big? They were looking for tall guys that Joe could work on fighting, practicing against guys that were much taller than him. So he's fighting. They're bringing in anybody they can find that can replicate Primo's height, but there's nobody that can replicate Primo's ridiculous size,
right,
and or the fearsomeness of what we're going to end up seeing Joe fight for this thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to read it. This is sort of these are relatively quick. I've got a few quotes to read today, but they're all sort of relatively quick. This one's probably the longest one.
All right.
So anyway, this is June 22nd when the article comes out, and so the article title is "He's ready is the chant as Louis continues belting spar mates." All right, so showing the same mercy and emotion as the execute. So this it's Bob Murphy. Actually, the Detroit Times, June 23rd. So he's June 22nd is like when he's writing, but the actual article came out on June 23rd. So 2 days before. So showing the same mercy and emotion as the executioner who springs the death trap. Joe Louis this afternoon laid bare the soul of a killer as he battered and buffeted his giant sparring partners with bewildering skill and savagery. "He's ready," snapped the solemn-faced Jack Blackburn as Louis tore into 245-pound Sal Harris and made him quit before the end of the first round. "He positively is ready," replied John Roxborough to newspapermen as Louis threw a whistling right that floored Leonard Dixon before a minute of their first round had elapsed. "Lawsy, man, but he show is ready," chimed in Bill Robinson, tap dancer of stage and screen fame, camp visitor. And tonight, under the Harlem moon, they are shuffling feet and making red-hot rhythm. But somehow these dancing, weaving figures manage to pick up the chant, "He's ready." Joe Louis is as physically and mentally ready as is possible for human fighting machines to become. He throws his last leather at Spar Pards Sunday afternoon. That should be an occasion for great feasting and celebration for the colored giants who have absorbed his punches since May 26th. Veteran fight observers say no man, not exempting Dempsey, has ever treated sparring partners so brutally as has Joe Louis.
Ooh.
He keeps shuffling in, shooting dynamite from either right or left. To Joe Louis, those towering humans are only punching bags. The enormous Harris, nose spread almost across his face, spread almost over his facial features, twice tied up Louis after rocking explosions to the stomach and whispered pleadings into Joe Louis's ear. The answer always was the same. Those sullen eyes glared back. Louis tore himself loose and blasted even harder.
Oh.
Finally, there came a left and a quick right cross to the head. It jarred Harris back against the ropes. He turned to walk away. "Get in there and mix it," snapped Jack Blackburn, showing a set of gold teeth. Harris turned back, but this time he did not face a human. He faced a ripping, raring beast with murder in his heart. Louis gave him the old 1-2. It was enough. Harris walked from the ring, spattered with blood that poured from his nose and 2 cuts in his face. Dixon was next. The olive-skinned Louis tired of the latter's efforts to tie him up in the clinches, the thing they say Primo will do Tuesday night in Yankee Stadium. He cut loose, and Dixon fell like a sack of lead.
Wow.
So you can just see this. I mean, Joe is just. I mean, you can see the transition that Joe has made by this point, where he's just. I mean, he has a job to do, and these guys are doing their job, being the sparring partners, and Louis is just cutting them to pieces. And and especially what's so revealing right there, besides the gold teeth of Blackburn, which I use that in the screenplay. I think we mentioned that earlier, where it's like I actually use that as a transition because in earlier shows, Jack Blackburn is just he is what he is. It's kind of like. Kind of a broken down drunk a little bit. But in this now, in the movie, he flashes the gold, and you see that he's now the trainer for Joe Louis, who's on the way up to superstardom.
Yeah.
So Jack Blackburn, you got to imagine like the trainer from Rocky, like Mickey in that case. He's got a flash in a set of gold teeth. Like, that's just like the grills. Like, I mean, how cool would that be to see in a movie like the trainer for Joe Louis has got gold teeth, like the grill. So, anyways, so he's like, but you can see he's like, he says, sell Harris. It jarred Harris back against the ropes. He turned to walk away. He's like, I'm done. And then Blackburn says, get in there and mix it. Like snap Blackburn. He's like, he's ready to. He's like no, get back in there and so this we're getting ready for this fight. I just love that article because it shows it's way longer. There's so much more to keep on reading, but it carries the idea for this, which is that Louis is getting ready for this. And so the next, I have another little quote that talks about. Well, actually, I want to mention here. So one of the other prominent elements of this story that is starting to emerge at this moment is that Italy in 1935, right about this time, announces that it's invading Ethiopia.
Oh.
All right, to become like to colonize it and to basically take over the country. And so, anyways,
why not?
Yeah, so anyway, with Mussolini as the dictator of Italy at this point. And so, I mean, this is the era we're living in.
Yeah.
Hitler's in Germany.
Oh, yeah,
Mussolini was ahead of Hitler as far as his aggressive, his aggression on the European world stage.
Yeah, many crickets.
And so Mussolini, this is what Mussolini is doing. Right now, as he's invading Ethiopia, and so it was so angered the sort of international community that here we have an Italian boxer facing against Joe Louis, who is of course black, and so now because Joe Louis starts to become this, the embodiment of Ethiopia fighting against Italy.
Right.
So they start to they're looking for every angle to promote this fight.
Sure.
And so now here it is. So this is the first time, it's almost like, everybody's heard about Joe Louis with the Schmeling fight, where it's like, America, Joe Louis versus Schmeling, but America versus Nazi Germany.
Yeah,
but this is the predecessor to that. Joe is already becoming, a symbol for a larger group of people, striking a blow against, another,
tyranny,
against another country or whatever. As a symbol. And so, I mean, this is that's the kind of implications this is taking on for Joe. He's, we mentioned at the beginning how he's becoming bigger than he ever dreamed. And so this is sort of an example of just what Joe Louis is becoming here is not just a boxer who is making money, but he's starting to become a symbol. And so, and again, not for the first time, not for the last time will this happen for him, of course. And so, anyways, so I just wanted to mention that. But so the next article I have to read here, little clip, talks about So I call it I just have a note here, the Joe Louis Booster Club, and just it shows the excitement of all these people, of how excited people are for this fight.
Okay.
Especially like coming. So this is an article. It's a Detroit article, written by Bob Murphy of the Detroit Times, and this is actually from a couple days prior to the article we just read. So this is June 20th, 1935. And so, this talks about the people from Detroit that are coming to watch Joe Louis, and this is just from Detroit. This doesn't even talk about the people that are already in New York. We've already talked about the excitement there.
Yeah.
So, Form Booster Club is the sort of subheading for the article. So, a Joe Louis Booster Club has been formed with Eddie Pips as the guiding influence. We're going to have between 100 and 200 cars filled to the brim, said Pips. We've printed booster stickers. In this way, if one car breaks down, the occupants will be picked up by another car. A little thing like a car breakdown is not going to deprive members of the Booster Club from seeing the fight. Commander James H. Peaton of the American Legion, Tom Phipps, Post 134, is handling arrangements for a special train which may carry as many as 1,000 Joe Louis fans to the scene of the battle. They will ride in day coaches and make the round trip for $28. This won't include a ticket to the fight. This train will leave Detroit at 8 o'clock Monday night and arrive in New York Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. The return trip will start at 2:30 a.m. Wednesday. Scotty Monteith also announced today that he will handle a fight special out of Detroit over the Michigan Central. I expect to have 100 go in my party, said the veteran fight manager. The round trip can be made for $80. This includes everything: hotel reservations, food, and $16 choice seats. And so it's talking about So here's
so
another.
people are going from Detroit are going in droves.
Oh,
to see
in
this.
droves, yeah. And there's many. I could say there's so many more. I was trying to figure out which ones to pick to read it, but I've got the quotes. If you ever get the books, the second book, there's article after article after article. Fans flocking to fight. New Yorker bust. From all over. I mean, it's just those are the subheadings for all these things where they're talking about just people like one of these articles talks about how for the cars driving out there, the order in which they put the. So here, I'll put it right here. It is right here. Those members. So this talks about the car caravans.
Yep.
It says, never has Detroit been more steamed up over a fight. Those members of the Joe Louis Booster Club with dilapidated cars will start first. The ones with just fair to Midland cars will be the second brigade, and the last will come the ones with the new cars. And so,
people break down. You
yes.
pick up your friends.
Yes,
on the way.
exactly. That's the idea.
That's
so they actually
great.
had organization for going out to see, to get out there. So there's all kinds of stuff like that talking about how they got out. But you can see that they're organizing special trains.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. I mean, it's just. I mean, this is like a movement. This is a phenomena thing. But this is the thing to understand though, is the question. What happens if Joe loses this fight?
Yeah.
What happens if Joe loses?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got like the hype that they've built up, the hype,
Sure.
the hope
Right.
that Joe is he's this new guy, the next guy that's going to be this new hero on the stage, especially for the African American community.
Right.
They're starting to build him up. And what happens if he fails in his first major test? That's a major weight to be carrying on.
Yeah.
He's now representative of Ethiopia fighting against Italy.
Right.
What happens if Joe loses? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
That's one of these things that, when you put yourself in that moment, like, what happens, if he loses and he just, the most biggest letdown, his whole career basically could be over because he's never going to have that same kind of, the next fight he's going to do better. That's not the case. He's got to win this fight.
Yeah.
This is it. This
Spoiler
is his biggest
alert.
moment. Yeah. Spoiler. You spoiler it by saying spoiler alert. But they, just so this is where, he's good up to that, but he loses his fight. I'm sorry about
But
that,
he
folks.
ironically loses.
So sorry, but ironically, that's where the story ends. And let's move on to the next thing. Yeah. No, so he goes into this fight at Carnera. And the referee Arthur Donovan before the fight, they have a microphone, and he actually says in the microphone, regardless of race, creed, or color, may the best man win.
Nice.
And so the crowd erupted with cheers for this fight. For when he said that, they're like, absolutely, let's
do this.
This is
thing.
America,
let's put it aside.
And this
this
is
is
the
1935.
35,
yeah.
yes.
People didn't talk like that.
Well, but here's an
But they
example
did.
that they did,
Yeah.
and that their people are saying, regardless of it's like especially with all
We're
this.
still trying to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. We are, but at the same time, this is
great.
this is showing that this process is beginning. it wasn't. They're trying.
But it is an
They're trying.
It's fine.
Yeah, but they're trying. And so it's like this is an example of that. And so so they go. So it goes to fight. So I just want to let the listener know right now that I have an article in here where they talked about how the fight was not going to be broadcast in order for it to try to drive more traffic to the actual fight itself. So maybe that's why they had such a huge interest for people coming out. And so but what's interesting is that there's actually a film of the fight.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I actually watched it today. I watched it today for like the 50th time just to kind of bone up on my recollections of it.
Right.
But if anybody that's listening to this or viewing it, you can actually go to YouTube and type in Joe Louis versus Primo Carnera, and what you're going to find is one of the greatest fights you will ever see. It is a tremendous fight. It's almost like when you watch like any fight footage that you ever seen from a movie where they're showing like the fighters are just swinging at each other and going to town. A lot of times, I mean, I love watching boxing. I love watching boxing matches and every once in a while like MMA and stuff like that.
Right.
But this fight is just such a tremendous fight. The articles of the time and again, spoiler alert, Joe Louis won, right? Joe Louis, the articles of this time, they talk about like Joe Louis just completely dismantled Primo Carnera. He just completely tore him apart. Primo goes down. He knocks Primo Carnera down 3 times. Carnera loses in the 2 minutes and 20 seconds into the 6th round by TKO. The referee ends it. And like they're just so hyped with praise. Like Joe Louis just totally tore this guy apart. He was just such a scientific boxer. Primo was just totally outclassed and yada yada. But if you actually watch the fight with your own eyes, you see a different fight. You really do. It's almost like I disagree with the analysis of the fight of the articles at the time. I think that they were too heavy on the hype train, and that they made it.
Oh my god!
That they made it appear as though.
I'm just watching the first minute of it.
I was gonna like put a clip up, but I was like, I don't know which one's it. But it's only 10 minutes long, and it's totally worth watching.
This is 16 minutes.
But what you notice when you watch this fight, that's what I'm saying. Like I almost
Primo's like got him. It's like it's crazy the size.
It's a crazy height difference. But what I'm saying is like I almost disagree with the way that they portray the fight, and I wonder if it was because they were still in hype train mode of the Hearst newspapers. Because when you actually watch the fight for yourself, Primo Carnera is holding his own the entire time. At no time during this fight does Primo appear as an easy victory for Joe Louis.
Sure.
Joe Louis is the better fighter. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But at no time in the entire 6 rounds does Primo stop coming after Joe.
Right.
He is swinging constantly. He is swinging at Joe. He's connecting with Joe. Joe is dodging his punches, and he's obviously throwing. Joe's punches are way more precise. I mean, Primo will catch him with a couple of clip punches and whatever, and then Joe, his counter is a dead sock to the middle of the face. Joe is way more. For every 5 punches that Carnera throws, he lands 1. For every 1 punch Joe Louis throws, he lands 1. It's like he has a far higher percentage. Joe is way more scientific. Joe is way more lethal with the punches that he expends. But Primo, at no time in this fight does Primo come across like he is soft or that he is in any way. I mean, he is a tough matchup. And he's constantly clinching with Joe, and coming out of the clinch, he's getting an extra punch in. And when you're getting clinched by a guy who's Primo, and Primo wasn't just some kind of barroom brawler. I mean, he's got technique.
Yeah,
he's got technique.
We said 80-some fights.
Yeah, this is a veteran of 82-7 record.
Yeah.
This is a guy who is a veteran knockout artist, and he at no time does he stop coming after Joe.
Right.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's when I wrote the screenplay for the movie. What I did was that's why I've watched that fight 50 times, because when I wrote the screenplay for this, all I did was I literally wrote out every single moment of this fight on paper,
right,
and then I plugged it into a screenplay format. I mean, that's all I did. That's all I did for that, was to fight. And it's such an exciting fight when you're watching it. You don't need to make anything up. No. You don't need to make anything up. It's a nonstop brawl between 2 great fighters, and that's what I'm saying. Like anybody anybody that it's strongly encouraged. I was thinking about doing a bunch of clips for this show, but I'm like, but it's just so easy to find. I mean,
Joe just got him with a great tag at the end of the first round.
If you look it up on YouTube, there's like 6 different versions of it. Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, no, it's tough to look away.
I'm mesmerized.
Primo's a beast. He's a beast, and he doesn't stop coming after Joe. Joe continuously, he's dodging, and then he's just dodging Primo constantly, and Primo does not stop moving. And one of the great moments in that fight is when it's like I think it's round 3 or round 5 or whatever. I mean, Primo's been taking, he's been taking shots all over for the first 3 or 4 rounds. And Primo, the bell rings to come out from the round, and Primo basically runs to the middle of the ring. Wow. I mean, he jumps out of his chair and he like sprints to the middle of the ring, and he's like, "Let's go!" And
let's get
like
this
he almost
going.
beats Joe to the middle of the ring. I've wondered if he's trying to deny Joe the ability to cut the ring in half, like we talked about how Joe would divide the ring into sort of kill zones and shrink the ring and force a guy to be in one corner or another where he could just scientifically annihilate him.
Right.
So I'm wondering if his goal was to get to the center of the ring, so therefore he could try to divide the ring and turn it into a kill zone for himself.
Right.
But it's just amazing that he's really been taking a beating, and he's just so spry as to jump up out of his seat and be like, I'm going to get to the middle of the ring first, and I'm going to control this fight, and I'm going to start swinging first. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just anybody that has a chance to watch this fight. It really does. I think, in my personal opinion, I think it's one of the greatest fights. I mean, it's just one of the most action-packed fights you're ever going to see. And, 70,000 people watch, 70,000 people at Yankee Stadium. Wow. They watched Joe Louis win. The gate is $375,000. Joe's cut of that is $60,433. So from less than a year prior, Joe's from his first fight at $59.
$50.
$50 to 60,000. 60,000. This is vastly more than he's made for all of his fights combined. For all of his other previous fights combined, his first 19 fights. This is, I mean, it's not even a comparison with this kind of number and this kind of money. And so Primo. I mean, there's so many pictures of the fight after the closer up pictures.
I was like,
and Primo is absolutely like his face is just covered with blood.
It's like 1.2 million.
1.2 million what? Oh, it's converted
today.
Into
Purchasing
power
today. It's like 1.2 million today.
Yeah. So by the end of this fight, Primo Primo did take an absolute beating. I mean, he took an absolute beating. His face is covered with gore. I've read articles where they talk about people in the crowd that are screaming, "Stop the fight! For God's sake, stop the fight! There's women present here." Like I read a quote. I don't
mean to laugh. But.
No, I read a quote, and I actually wrote this into the screenplay that somebody vomits in the crowd because of the gore coming out of a Primo's face.
Oh,
I mean, the consequence of Primo standing on his feet for 6 rounds. He got knocked down 3 times towards the end of the fight in the last round before the ref finally called it. Because it was just like his face was hamburger. I mean, that was like one of the consequences of standing on if not just going down. I mean, he took a royal beating, and still, he went out on his feet though. I mean, he didn't go down for the count. It was a TKO. But like I say, there was actually an article where somebody in the crowd vomited from just an appearance of, and so don't tell me that I can't write that into a screenplay.
Oh.
Good. The description of Primo at the end of this fight. You see anybody watching this screenplay?
Yeah.
Wait till you see maybe one of these days I'll read the scene for the Primo fight, because it's one of my favorite written scenes, because it is, man, the gore is just like, it's so bad. Like they're like, like I'm writing and going, somebody vomits at this moment, action. Somebody vomits, amidst all the chaos going on, and Joe's like, good Lord, this guy is not going to go down, man. Like, so. Anyways, it's an incredibly violent fight, and I'm sure it'll make for a perfect, slot in for this movie, which we're already, there's people getting teeth knocked out and all this stuff, so, but anyway, so Joe wins the biggest fight of his career thus far.
Yeah.
And from that moment, it's just celebrations across the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's because now it's just such a huge breath of relief, because all these people that are wondering if Joe is the guy, if Joe is the Jack Johnson without the Jack Johnson sort of behavior, so to speak, that there's a new hero that people can really get behind, that this is, this God-fearing guy that the newspapers love and everybody loves this guy, that this is the moment where, like, there's groups like the NAACP that weren't even sure if they could really get behind him full force because they weren't sure if he was the guy.
Right.
After Primo Carnera fight, he's the guy. He is the guy, and everybody's seen it with their own eyes. And so I've got so many articles about the celebrations after Joe's victory, but I just want to read one just to kind of. I mean, I was looking at it today. I'm like, man, there's a lot. So I just wanted to read just a couple of little ones that paint a little bit of a picture. So to summarize a lot of the article that came before it, talking about how people were just listening listening for any word of this fight, so it says suddenly. So this article comes out from the Detroit Times, and the article came out the day after the fight. So this is June 26, 1935, by a guy named Herbert Breen. And so suddenly the horse race. So I guess it was broadcast. I mean, there was articles that says it wasn't broadcast on the radio, but this one here is saying it was broadcast on the radio. So I don't know who to believe. They both come from the same time. And so this one here says, suddenly the hoarse radio voice flashed the verdict, Lewis by a technical knockout. Out from the houses and cafes, silent but for the radio's drone, swarmed a wild, joy-crazed multitude, screaming, yelling, dancing. A frowsy red sweater Charleston with a scarlet evening dress in the street. A pearl derby embraced a tattered calico lovingly. A cacophony of auto horns shattered the night. At Elizabeth and St. Antoine streets, where the Joe Louis Booster headquarters are located, the pavements were suddenly miraculously packed. Honking cars piled high with Negroes who attached themselves informally in whatever they could grab, tried vainly to get through. Everybody was laughing and yelling, Joe Louis. At police headquarters, some 12 Negroes detained for various reasons in the 9th floor lockup mysteriously got word of the result the minute the fight was over and required the attention of several officers before their enthusiasm was cooled. It says boot blacks, blacked brown shoes, and brown black shoes. Nothing mattered. So I'm going to walk through the last few words because that was a tongue twister.
Yeah.
So he's saying, boot blacks is in people that were shoe polishers that polished black boots using black shoe polish. Boot blacks, black brown shoes. So they put black paint on brown shoes and browned black shoes. So they were putting the wrong, they're trying to just like, they're so mesmerized by the excitement that they're polishing the shoes with the wrong colors. That's what they're saying. So anyways, that's a heck of a tongue twister, but that's the idea. But it just showing how
there's a frenzy.
It's a frenzy. People are running out of the streets going, Joe Louis. They're all super excited. And so following that, there's like I say, tons of different quotes talking about like that. In that same spirit, where they're giving these anecdotal stories, like all these people that had hawked all their stuff to make bets on Joe Louis, they'd hawked all their stuff to the help me out here with
bookies, pawn shops.
Pawn shops, yeah. They pawned all their stuff to get money to gamble with.
Yeah.
Now there's a mad rush to the pawn shops to get all their stuff back, and the pawn shops are getting all it's this crazy. There are all these little sort of like stories that like that. So anyways, so this is where it gets cool is with the official welcome for Joe by the city. And so Detroit official. So this is again this is the day after 27th. This is the following day following the articles about the celebration. Bud Shaver, Detroit Times, who's the editor of the Detroit Times newspaper. Detroit officials, sports writers, and radio executives today laid plans for a rousing reception for Joe Louis. Mayor Cousins has appointed James M. O'Day as chairman of a committee that would arrange the welcome home party honoring Lewis when he returns here, probably after 4th of July. His action came at the request of the Common Council, the City Council, which also adopted a resolution congratulating the young Negro for his smashing victory over Primo Carnera. So the committee is named. The committee named to assist O'Day in the reception plans include John Smith, president of the Common Council, Frank McDonald and Bob Murphy of the Detroit Times, W.W. Edgar, H.G. Salzinger, George W. Trendle, president of the Detroit United Theaters, George Richards of WJR, Jefferson Webb, WWJ, W. Wright Gedge, WNBC, so Police Commissioner Henrik Pickert, and L.C. Blunt, president of the American Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Like, this is a who's who. They don't mention the newspapers.
Yeah.
I was just noticing that. They didn't know that W.W. Edgar and H.G. Salzinger,
Yeah.
those are the editors for the Free Press and News, right? These are the main guys from these rival newspapers. This is a Detroit Times article, so they're not going to mention the newspapers.
So, but they're lucky they mentioned the guys.
Yeah, they mentioned the guys. But this is an official thing here. They're talking about the police commissioner, the mayor, the city council, the WJR, WWJ, WMBC. They're all there. They're putting this committee together to welcome Joe.
That's
how
party
big
for
this
guy.
is. This is how big this is. Is they have an official delegation sent. They're like,
jeez.
This is like the Queen of England coming to the Detroit.
Right.
They've got everybody that is anybody welcoming Joe when he arrives into city. What does this show you how big he was getting at this moment? It doesn't get any bigger. It's not like the mayor's going, oh, we congratulate Joe. That's great. They got everybody there waiting for him at the train station when he comes off. So it just shows, how big. And so to sort of, I think we have an article, a photo there where he's meeting off the train. I put an article where he's the mayors. There's a picture of him actually greeting the mayor. There's a photo of the Joe Louis Booster Club all celebrating. There's this huge, it's kind of grainy, but it's a picture where they're all just ecstatic. You can see how excited they are. And but the picture, though, like I say, there's a picture of Joe just arriving. It's dated, I think, what does it say, July 10th on there?
Yep.
And so then that was Joe when he first came off the train. He's me there. I have a picture from 1935 where he's going to end up meeting Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the President of the United States. Right? This Joe is a phenomenon at this moment. And so, there's another quote. I don't really want to read this one. It's kind of long, but long and short of, but it's in the book. And it's, but I can talk about it. And so there's a letter from Governor Frank Fitzgerald that Joe received and was like carrying it with him in his pocket, talking about, and the idea that it's a very long article, but the idea was that he was saying. It was kind of hinting at like what we were talking about at the beginning where somebody that's come from nothing is like now the pinnacle of the profession.
Sure, yeah.
And he's giving advice to Joe saying, it's gonna be very difficult for you. This is a letter, like literally, this wasn't a letter for the press.
Right.
This was a letter written to Joe Louis from the governor of Michigan, and Joe ended up sharing it with the press saying,
keep your head about yourself. Yeah.
And the idea was, Joe use this as an opportunity for the advancement of, and this is what he's saying in here, for your people, don't just go and spend this money. Like you find yourself at where you can be a tremendous role model, and I think that you're the guy that can actually do this, and I really think that you should do whatever you can to not just go out and live high in the hog, but to set an example and to help raise to help make some changes in this world and so and Joe shared that with the media, so I've got the entire article there if anybody wants to read it, and it's in the second book.
Wow.
So page 34 if anybody
there
wants
you
to
go.
read it. Yeah.
If you're following along at home.
If you're following along at home. So anyways, there's one more sort of photo I want to show.
Yeah.
And it's a picture. In this picture, and I can describe this to anybody.
Yep.
This is a picture of smiling Joe Louis.
Yeah.
And it's taken moments after the Carnera fight. This is in the locker room after the fight.
His face looks like he's been in a fight.
He's a little swollen up, but he has got the biggest smile on his face.
Still looks a little boy.
He's a
Still
kid.
looks like a little kid.
He's 21
Happy
years
little
old
kid.
at this moment, And so he's got this biggest smile on his face. And what's interesting is that photo, prior to this photo, it was very rare to see pictures of Joe Louis smiling. In fact, one of his nicknames was Deadpan Joe. Because he was like... there was, I think we read one of the quotes where they were saying there's Joe Louis show. They're like, if the professor could, the guy actually, I remember the quote. If the professor could borrow Joe Louis's facial expressions, they'd make $1 million in poker,
right?
Because he never shows any excitement whether he's winning or losing. Like he's just always they called him Deadpan Joe. He was just very didn't show emotion, and this is the moment after. I think that this. Kind of like the photo of him being carried off the train, that this is a signature moment in the turning point of his life, that from this moment forward, like before going into this fight, like maybe he didn't even know that if he was going to be the guy.
Sure.
Maybe he didn't know if he could beat Carnera. Maybe he didn't know this. But after this fight, everybody knew that Joe was a superstar, and that nobody knew I mean, that he's like the next Jack Dempsey, that he is the next, maybe breaking the mold of Jack Dempsey and becoming something even bigger than Dempsey. I mean, he's only 21 years old and he's now at the pinnacle of fame. And so now I think that in this photo, in this moment, right after this fight, Joe realizes that he's got the goods. That if he can, beat Carnera the way that he did, that
here we go.
that he's ready to take off, and that and what a sense of relief for him in that regard. And so from now on, you're going to start seeing way more photos of Joe. I mean, there's it's not to say that there's no pictures of him smiling, but not like this. He's smiling from ear to ear, and in the photo, there's a in 1935 they released this. The Detroit Free Press released this line of it was every once a week they would release these photo cards of the Detroit Tigers in the newspaper, and they had every major player on the team. There's 20 of them. The whole set goes for $300. You can buy the whole set.
Okay.
I've got a few of them, but they released all these photos of these Tiger players, and they're really cool. They're like this pastel background. They're all full color, and it's just their face, and it's a pastel background. I've got them all in the book. Among those Tiger releases was one for Joe Louis. Oh. And so it's got all the Tigers and Joe Louis. And so there's a picture of Joe in this thing, and he's got the biggest smile on his face. It's bigger than the smile in that photo. It's like ear to ear he's grinning, and it's just such a look of happiness and fun that he's having. Mm-hmm. And this begins the next sort of chapter in Joe Louis's career, where he is no longer the up-and-coming guy who's just trying to, put some money in his family pockets. He is
the real
superstar Joe going forward. No doubt about it. He is superstar Joe, and it's going to take his life, and, this is the next sort of level of his life, so...
and those earnings.
Yeah, and the money, he's got it, now he's rich, and he can do whatever the heck he wants financially. He can do whatever he wants to do. Now it's the next chapter is going to be he's got his fight against Max Baer. We're going to get into that the next show. We're not going to talk about the Max Baer fight because we always leave off the signature moment for each subject. We're going to do one big episode to put them all together.
Yeah.
But so we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff that happened between the Primo fight and then Max Baer. But going into next week, we're going to see how this fame of Joe, now everywhere he goes, he is a household name. Yeah. Everywhere he goes. And it's I call this the summer of Joe because from June until his fight with Max Baer in September, I think he only has one fight, and it's a tune-up fight against Kingfish Levinsky, and he just tears apart Kingfish. But it's not even counted. It's an exhibition fight, and it's but otherwise Joe just gets to have fun.
What were the odds on the fight with Carnera?
I don't have that, but I do have.
Was Carnera favored?
I don't think so. I think it was even money because they actually says it says
what were those Vegas?
I have it.
What were those Vegas odds?
I don't have the odds, but I will say here it says the fight Tuesday night between Louis and the Vast Italian Vast Italian promises to be one of the wildest betting orgies the ring has seen in years. There is a
betting orgy.
Yeah, there is a positive element of uncertainty.
Right.
The Carnera camp followers insist Joe cannot weather the tiring treatment he will receive from the Man Mountain in the clinches. Yeah. There are some, including Joe Jacobs, who say a short puncher such as Louis has no chance against the armored defense afforded by Carnera's big arms. And so it says, so that's what they're saying. So there's I think it was going both ways because there's a guy in the next one of the other articles I didn't read about the excitement was about a guy that ran an ice cream parlor that bet against some guy, and that ice cream parlor bet like a year's worth of ice cream versus on Carnera. And it was an Italian ice cream guy, and he bet with a black something I forgot what his profession was, but he bet a significant amount of money against this guy giving free ice cream out. So the guy comes to the ice cream station to redeem the bet, and he brings 50 people with him to redeem the bet. So you mean that guy would have never made that bet if Joe was a 50-1 favorite.
Right.
And that's kind of the point, is that nobody knew if he. There's people that are the hype certainly suggested that he was the guy. He's getting hype from every newspaper that's out there. But he had never fought anybody super, super big. And
Sure.
Carnera was as big as you got at that point.
Yeah.
And Joe pounded him. So, so now Joe is the guy, and it's like people are like, no, he's the guy. And so now going forward, the odds are going to really start to slant towards Joe. The Max Baer bet, I don't think the odds would have been tremendous against Baer because Baer was a legit fighter too. Baer is one of the best fighters of his era. He's the most recent heavyweight champion. So, the odds, I don't think they would have got carried away too much. It's not going to be like 50-1.
Sure.
Later in Joe Louis's career, where they called this thing like the Bum of the Month Club, and I think it was the 50s when they just finding anybody they could find to stick in the ring, and Joe Louis is knocking them out every week. I think at that point it's going to be like the 50-1 odds, where you're just. Where you just have, Joe is just such a massive landslide favorite that it's not even worth betting. On him. But yeah, so there's Joe. Like this is that moment. This is the moment that Joe really turns the corner from in his career where he is he's officially the guy. He's officially the superstar, and now he can look forward to now his goal is the heavyweight championship beyond any doubt.
Looking forward to more of the story.
Yeah.
So we appreciate everybody joining us for this story, and as you do, if you haven't done so as of yet, please comment, subscribe, collect. Whatever it is, follow along on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate you here with us, or like or leave a comment on YouTube. Those are great too. I love when family members or relatives of people that we're talking about leave comments. We've had like 2 or 3, 4 of those.
No, it's great.
I want to try to wrangle some of those people together for an episode.
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the Detroit area still. I met when I was doing that. I wish I would have kept I've got quite a few I'm friends with them on Facebook and that. But there was a lot that I just didn't really. I mean, I just kind of talked with them briefly, and then they kind of went back into the disappeared back into the world. But
sure.
But there was many that I talked to. It was kind of crazy.
It's fun. It's fun that people comment. We're really enjoying sharing the story, and when people chime back and have comments, positive or negative. We enjoy it. We enjoy that feedback. So thank you for all the comments and being with us. So like, subscribe, leave a comment, DetroitCityOfChampions.com, where all the materials can be found, and Facebook and YouTube. And
come visit me.
We'll do it again.
If you're ever at Partridge Creek Mall in Clinton Township or 12 Oaks Mall in Novi, stores there called Inspire Marketplace. I'm there at one of those two places pretty much every day. So. Come if you want to talk City of Champions. I've actually met a guy that listens to our show. I can actually give him a shout out because he's a regular listener to our show.
Oh,
he
I love
came into the
having
store
that.
and said his. So it's
That's right. You were going to mention this last week, right?
Yeah, Mark Failer. Yeah,
Mark
Failer. Yeah, I wrote his name because he's a regular listener. And
Thanks,
I just
Mark.
want to give him a shout because he just bumped into him and he's like, yeah, listen to your show, man.
We almost 2 weeks in a row you forgot to say hi to Mark.
Yeah. So because I wrote it down because we wanted to make a note to mention because he said hi and everything. And right in, we give you a shout out, man. We say hi to you and
for sure
answer questions. Especially we love questions. We like to hear feedback from people about all of it. So
all right, more diving horses next week, I think.
Diving horses are a popular subject around here. It started.
I digressed.
It started to
early.
become. It started to take over a life of its own for a second. We had to kind of veer back off the track because we're about to get into a whole show. Like, we were going to talk about Joe Louis today, but
let's talk about diving horses.
Even though neither one of us really know anything about this subject at all.
No.
The show we had to really pull ourselves back, Jamie, because we were headed down.
I thought it was wonderful that she actually adopted that horse.
No, it's a great. That's
and she's adopted out over 5,000 former greyhound racing dogs.
Jeez.
Yeah, she's
huge. What does she find homes for them?
Yeah. She's
I was gonna say she's got 500 of them. She's got an entire. It's like she owns like a 50-acre property. She's got dogs running wild all over the place.
All right, so we'll do it again very, very soon. Till next time, put them up.
Right on cue. You saw that cue card? It hit it right on spot.
It is.